Welcome back to D&D Beyond. I am Amy Dallen, and today on our live show, I'm going to talk to one of the best DMs I've ever played with, one of the coolest people on the planet. Please welcome back Satine Phoenix. Hi, how you doing?
Yeah. Thank you. That was very sweet of you. I'm feeling so good. It's always good to see you.
Oh, that's so... just completely selfishly, it's very nice to see you. And if you're watching, I promise this is not just an excuse for me to call up people I want to hang out with. It's also to learn from them because Satine is one of the best DMs I know. And so she has shared in a lot of places over time a lot of great tips for DMs. But today specifically, what I wanted to know from you as a DM of many, many years is what your advice would be for players on how to help the DMs of the world, how players can bring their best selves to the table and help contribute to a great play experience for everyone from the perspective of a pro-level DM. But first, I also want to mention, because this is our first live stream since it went public, that if you are watching this and you have used our combat tracker on D&D Beyond, the save and resume feature is live right now. You can save and resume in the combat tracker. Please try it out. Let us know what you think. We will be talking a lot more about it on the dev update, but it is live today, and I'm excited because it was my stream day, and so I get to say it. So with all that in mind, hi Satine, how you doing? I'm so excited to hear your thoughts on this one.
I have so many thoughts. Where should we start? I mean, seriously. I'm a live streamer, but I also run event games and convention games and home games and charity games. And really, it's different based on the kind of gaming that you're doing, even if from just normal home games virtually and normal home games at home.
Right. There is a wide variety in the ways that we play now. And of course, we've added the element of D&D with an audience, which changes the conversation for some of those cases if you're going that route. But let's start from the beginning. Before the game, before you even sit down together, maybe during character creation or pre-communication, how can I, the player, help you, the DM?
Okay, so it's good to understand two different things. So we've got in-person games and digital games. So when I, the game master, am at a home game, one of the things I'm tracking is my story, but I'm also tracking what people are doing as they arrive. They don't understand that I'm watching them also in a very friendly way, like, how are they doing? Are they hungry? Are they panicked? Are they relaxed? Are they just focused on the game? Do they kind of want to talk a little bit? What is their demeanor? Now, if I'm doing a virtual game, I don't get a chance to do that. You know, usually people just put their, they put their tape over their camera, or they have their camera off until it's time to play, and I have no input at all. So to kind of curb the lack of being able to be seen by your game master, is so valuable to be seen by your game master. I would say, if you're having a bad day, if you're having a hard time at home, tell your game master that. Write him a little note and say, hey, I'm panicky today. I'm having a really hard brain day. I just went through a lot at work. I just had a fight with and this isn't you kind of unloading on your game master. This is a note, a very small amount of information to tell them what to expect from you. Maybe you need something that they can't anticipate. So maybe you just kind of want to float behind the group and be a support. Maybe you haven't been able to make a lot of decisions at home, and you kind of want to take the lead today, or at least kind of be in the front line, letting them know how you are doing. If you're happy, if you're sad, if you're easily triggered. I'm very easily triggered this week. So that's a good thing to communicate. And also remember, communication is very important. And by saying that to your game master, it will allow them to be like, okay, I can anticipate a couple things, maybe change little things here and there. But also, you don't have to just say that to your game master. You can let everyone else know. And I really want to reiterate, this is not you having a conversation and unloading. This is information. So, hey guys, I'm having a really rough day. Now, you have to be very careful too about wanting attention versus saying how you feel, right? Those are two different things. One can be a very vampiric thing where you're pulling energy out of your other players, and one is just a, please know how I am and I will try to be there for you, but it is important for you to know that I don't want a lot of attention today, or I do want a lot of attention today. But it's kind of a back and forth. You're meeting your players and your game masters halfway so that they're not having to dig and try to figure out why you're not being as present, why you were inciting a lot of conflict. These are things where I, Satine, can recognize within myself if I am a player and say, okay, well, I really want everyone to have a good time too, and I am kind of having a rough time. Here's the way I'm going to communicate. And then when you start the game, everyone's like, cool, we're all on the same page.
That's a great idea. That's so valuable. I love that. Okay, what about when we're sitting down to play, actually at the table? What are some sort of do's and don'ts or things players do that can really help you do your job?
Oh yeah. Okay. First rule is if you're going to roll your d20 to attack something, roll the damage also.
Really? Oh no! See, I
Yeah.
always wait. Oh.
No, roll them all at the same time because it speeds it up. You have all the numbers right there. If it hits, you just calculate. That's all you have to do. So easy, saves so much time, especially my husband's a paladin. He rolls a lot of dice. Let me tell you, sometimes you're just like, I wish there were prefix numbers that you could just have done because all of a sudden you're rolling like 8 sets of dice. But it's a really nice way to keep combat moving, right? Another thing is and this is really, there's a couple different things. So I'm going to talk about combat and I'm going to talk about scenes and encounters first.
Sure.
Because I kind of went there. But know what you're going to do. So maybe you make a one-shot character, right? And if it's a third level character, it's easy to understand what it is you're going to do. If it's a 6th level character, kind of know what your go-to cantrip is in a combat situation. Know what your first 2 or 3 attack spells are going to be. Know what your buffs are going to be. That way you can kind of just call. And what you really need to do, and I say you need to, you don't need to, but this is my recommendation, is to pay attention to what is happening. A huge thing that is hard for game masters is to stop because somebody wasn't paying attention. Someone was daydreaming, they were on their phone, they were reading a website, they had their character sheet right here, so they've disconnected from the group. Be present, listen to what's going on, because when it's your turn, you know what's going on when it's your turn. And then it's 5 other people's turns. And if you're not paying attention, you have no idea what's going on, then everyone has to kind of pause and stop, and it slows it all down.
And you could miss opportunities if they, like, for instance, if they did something that gives a status effect to the monster, really help change your decisions, you might miss that.
Yeah, and another thing you can do is write the note. So if somebody did that status effect, you can write a note. It's prone, which gives you advantage, right, to attack it if you are not prone. So paying attention to what's going on, as a player, you should be reacting, right? You are reacting to the environment around you. And if you have a baseline understanding of your character, you can kind of shoot out things. I know that I've got this many reactions, or I have this reaction, and if this thing triggers it, I'm going to go ahead and use that reaction. If I'm not paying attention, and then 2 people down, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got this reaction. Can I use this reaction? there's a point as Satine the Game Master where I kind of want to say no, because it's a reaction that should happen in the moment, right? And if I have to go backwards, you're slowing down the game, and I'm not saying you're going to ruin the game, but it just it's not encouraging forward momentum. The other thing
Right.
is you don't have to take all your actions. Yeah. Recently, Jameson and I were playing in a game and we're like, we don't have to use a bonus action. We don't have to use a move action. I know that all this, and there was like a lot of people. And so we're like, why don't we just make an attack and then move on? Like we don't have to do all these other things. If I'm doing resource management within a game as a player, because I do play on Game Master, maybe I'm not going to whip out all my smites. Maybe I'm just going to make an attack, and if that hits or doesn't hit, maybe I don't even make 2 attacks. Maybe I role play my way out of it. So you have an assorted amount of things that you can do, but it doesn't mean you have to do them. So
I
that's
love that.
in combat stuff.
And of course, I feel like it's probably goes without saying, but for all of these tips, and I've seen you do it, you will alter your DM style to people's experience levels and comfort levels.
Yeah.
But I think this is like incredibly helpful. Sort of, if I really want to level up my play, these are the kinds of things that I should start incorporating. In terms of not forgetting your reactions and stuff like that.
Oh man. And so, okay, I don't know if everyone knows, but I'm madly in love with D&D Beyond. I use it every day, multiple times a day, for things that I don't even need to. But in my games, I do have all my players have their D&D Beyond characters. And because we're playing virtually and even in person, right? Most people that I'm playing with are using an iPad or a computer. They have their character. There's no reason for you not to have your spells pulled up. So that is a house rule that I have. Please have your spells ready to go if you want to cast them. I will allow people, if they have choice paralysis, to hold their action because they don't know what they're supposed to do. So as a game master, I say, we're going to skip your turn. We'll come back to you when you're ready. Because I do understand that it is hard for some people to make choices. And holding an action isn't always the thing that you want to do because you don't know what you want to do. So as a game master, I will allow that. But as a player, I would say to let your game master know that sometimes you have choice paralysis, and thinking on the fly makes you nervous, which makes it worse. That's totally okay. So, but with D&D Beyond, man, it really helps. If you want to cast a spell, have it pulled up and ready. You'll literally just click on it on D&D Beyond. So that's, yeah. So basically for players to help a game master in that situation, understand your character sheet. Understand where to look. You don't have to memorize it. You just have to remember that there are tabs. And if you're doing an iPad, there is a little cube on the bottom right. If you're on a website, they're all aligned next to each other. So being able to reference easily is so important.
Obviously, I am a big fan of our tools and find that great. And that finding that balance as a player of being like, all right, I want to review everything that I can do while also paying attention to combat isn't the easiest thing, but boy, it pays off. So that's for combat. What about like the other pillars of D&D? What are good ways players help you out as a DM during social stuff, during roleplay?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so tell your game master what you would like to do. Don't tell them what you want to roll. Let your game master tell you what you should roll, because the game master has more information than you do. So if you're like, I want to roll Arcana, it doesn't tell me what you are looking for, what you want to do. But maybe it's not Arcana that's going to get you what you want. It's actually going to be a history check or a medicine check or whatever it is. So gift your game master your idea of like, I want to do this because what I'm trying to do is X. So your game master's like, got it, roll this. Now I see a lot of players, they're like, well, I have a plus 10 in this and only a plus 5 in that. It's like, well, this is also the fun of D&D. It is the dice, right? Because even if you have a plus 10, if you roll a 1 or 2, it's probably not going to work. So your bonus is super extra cool, but you could definitely, if you have no bonuses, you could definitely succeed in a skill check. So there's that.
Don't be
Let's
afraid of
see.
using those non-optimized skills. It's part of the fun.
Exactly, exactly. Um, there are rules in the book, right, that we all know and love. Your game master has their own house rules. The Dungeon Master's Guide is a guide, not a handbook. Players have their handbook. So there are times when your game master is going to tweak the rules. And oftentimes it is in your favor. I do this all the time. And then I'll have players go, well, actually, it's like this. And I'm like, yeah, it is like that. Do you want this or not? Because I'm literally giving you a thing. Now, when it comes to like going down in hit points, I understand that that's a little more fragile, but allow your game, trust your game master a little bit, like trust that they're going to put you in a situation for you to become a hero. Of all the game systems, Dungeons and Dragons is about being a hero. So that is what we do, is we put obstacles in front of you to overcome, to be that hero. If it's hard, that treasure is really good, and you should trust that we're trying to get you there. We are not trying to prevent you from going there.
Ah, I love that. That's so inspiring. Okay, after the game, or between sessions, what are ways that we as players can help our DMs?
Okay, so after the game, please don't jump off video call. Don't run out the door. There's this thing that's important, and I used to say it was important for players. It's actually important for both players and game masters. It's called aftercare. It is a term that is from another community that a lot of us have brought in because it is about psychological care for the people around you. You've just ignited all these emotions and chemicals in your body. You've both, in 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 hours, you've gone up in happiness, and then you dive down into sadness or pain or anger or whatever. Maybe you had some in-game conflict, and at the end, you guys are burned, and there's all the serotonin things happening and depletion, and you kind of need a moment to just relax. So, unwind together. Game masters need you because they want to know how you feel about it. They want to be heard about how they feel about it. Everyone wants to kind of be heard and share their experience. So this is kind of a for players and game masters. Aftercare is very important. Give each other about 10 minutes minimum, if not 15, 20 minutes to recap what was your favorite parts, what was hard for you. If anybody crossed any lines, it's a good time. We've got the X card system, we've got red, yellow, green, we've got lines and veils and nopes and all of those. It's often, even with all these precautions, things still happen. People's feelings still get hurt. And it might not be a thing where you can retroactively cancel the entire game that just happened, but you can voice and say, when this happened, I was really uncomfortable, and I didn't want to ruin anyone else's experience, so I didn't say anything. But really, by not saying anything, maybe you didn't allow someone else to voice their experience, that they also weren't having, a good time. So use this time to find all the fun and unwind, but also just be a little more honest with each other. Oftentimes, as a game master, I need that end moment to be like, I can't believe you guys did this. Honestly, that was hard for me until you all consented. So I actually ask for consent when there is a thing that happens in game that isn't normally okay. And so I'd say, okay, or have we all consented? And then I can bring forth my thing of, I did not expect that. At first I was uncomfortable. After I asked you consent, everyone raised their hand. I became more comfortable. Are you guys still feeling that same way? Did it go too far? How is that? And even if it's not
check in.
you're not having one-on-one, exactly, check-ins. but you're not doing one-on-ones. This is kind of a group thing. But really, afterwards, let your game master know what you liked about the game. That you don't, that there might be things that don't make you, like, you didn't like as much as other things. And you can talk to your game master about that as well, but really tell them what you liked. Actually, lately I have been hearing more about what people like afterwards and messages and stuff. But there was a big amount of time, and this was during quarantine. Everybody was kind of, like really hardcore quarantine. Life was hard for everyone, but it makes me feel good, and it helps me create my story when I know what people like. It does help when people tell me what they don't like. I don't really hear a lot of what people don't like, but any information is better than no information.
But hearing things like, I really loved that NPC, or that puzzle was so cool, or oh my gosh, the narration for that monster fight was like that kind of thing.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Will do. Let's see. Okay. And I do love an after game thing. I think we've mentioned on here before that I haven't used it much myself, but I have friends who use it for every game. There's the Stars and Wishes is a good system if you kind of want to formalize those check-ins after sessions where you talk about something that you really loved and something that you'd look for. But you can find your own system. You can use that. There's I love that you alluded to a lot of the different ways that people are working to figure out the game around the game and how we can support each other in it.
Because we got to remember, we're there to play. We have this much time in our lives. We really want to encourage like uplifting and happiness. And I like the stars that you just mentioned. Jameson has one where it's rosebuds and thorns. So that's the things you don't like, things you like, rosebuds and thorns. So
I love that. I love this question from Hapwing. The DMG says that bringing snacks and drinks is often something the players can handle. How can players best serve the DM when it comes to snack choice?
Oh, so ask them what their dietary restrictions are. Ask them what their favorite foods are. Yeah, communication. Ask them. Definitely don't guess. Surprises are not fun because, for instance, I had been a dungeon master for a long time, and suddenly I stopped eating sugar because my body doesn't like sugar. And people were bringing, like, here, this is for you. And I'm like, I can't eat this. It will literally kill me.
No.
So yeah, just talk to them. It's a very good thing. Snacks are good.
Thank you for your questions. Keep those rolling in as we go forward. So yeah, so that and I'll bank some more of these for the end, but that one made me laugh. Do you have particular advice for how players can help their DMs over the course of long campaigns? Note taking, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Oh, take those notes. Oh my goodness. Take notes. But more than that, be organized. Somebody has to be the note taker. Somebody needs to. Are you not a note taker?
Sometimes sometimes I write down everything and I'm mapping by hand as we go, and other times I'm like, I wrote one word. What did that mean?
Now, you've got to usually have, it's like a 3 or 4 person game. Maybe it's a 6-person game. You can divvy up things. You can have one person track all the NPCs, one person track all the city names and locations, one person tracking what the quests are. What are your quests? Somebody's got to remind each other about what the purpose is, because oftentimes, those shopping quests get in the way, and then nobody remembers what you're supposed to do when you finish shopping.
Something's on fire, but what was it?
Happens all the time. So yeah, somebody to track, and then you can just do that. The other thing is, so I actually experienced this, and I experienced this when I got in a car accident, and I still wanted a game master, but I couldn't think. So I told my tables, I was like, look, I'm not going to pretend that I can remember everything. I actually can't physically remember most things. So I would love for somebody to track initiative. I would love somebody to calculate my dice rolls, because at the time I couldn't even math. I love math as a hobby, but I couldn't. 9 plus 1 was 91. That's how bad it was. And my
Mm.
players, instead of ridiculing me, they were like, "Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing that with me. I had no idea, but of course, we're literally here to play. So why wouldn't we help?" And it made everything great. And so there were even points where I would say, okay, I'm having a 50% brain day. What is the rule on this? And if your game master asks you the rule, then you can share the rule. If your game master does not ask you the rule, it is probably better not to share the rule, unless there are exceptions to that, because there are some rules that if you break them, it will break the game. But that's a whole different
Very
conversation.
good general rule to keep in mind. Yeah. Because there are times where you're like, can somebody remind me of what I like this particular cover circumstance, how that would work here? And there's other times where you're like, executive decision, we are not worrying about that right now. And you've made that silently and they don't know that. And you kind of need them to just go with it, as you alluded to
Really
earlier.
cool. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So that's long campaigns. What about one shots? Advice for one shots. How can I help you as a DM if I'm showing up to your one shot?
Okay. Yeah. You have 2, 3, 4 hours. That is it. You're not shopping. There's no reason to shop unless you were literally in a shop, you know? But your story is very short, right? And your game master is probably over prepared for this. They probably plug too many things into one area. I just speak from experience because this is what I do. But you come up with your own agency. Come up with a reason why you are with these people. You do not need to, in my games, so this is what I'll just say what I do in my games. I ask my players to come up with a reason why they've gotten together for this adventure. I say, you've been together for 3 years. Why? That way, by the time we start, you're already friends. You already trust each other. Maybe you even know each other's spells and abilities so that you can work with each other. Or 3 people can be like, that's the thief. They're going to pickpocket the dude or, unlock the door. And people can start trusting each other and pushing forward the other members. That helps so much. But you figure out how to buy in, because the game master has a story for you, and essentially you've already bought into the story by sitting at the table.
I love
Agency,
that.
there is a short time frame. Even if the game master doesn't tell you there's 3 hours to finish this game, you already know how much time you have to finish the game. Please check the time. I use a laptop. And so I know, and as a game master, I actually time out all of my scenes and encounters so that it fits within a small time frame. But as a player, you know that if you've been sitting in a shop or a bazaar for 45 minutes, you just ate into something else. You just ate into time that the game master had planned to do something. And sometimes game masters will just let things go, and then everyone realizes the final combat is only 15 minutes and you kind of need to go over, or something didn't get finished. So kind of like think ahead about where you don't have to ever have written any story before, but remember that time is of the essence. You're going to go on a quest, you're going to have to solve something, you're going to have to go get something or whatever. Make sure that you're with the game master. And when the game master is talking, everybody close their mouths. Because if the game master can't talk, you can't get information. That's really a thing. And then the other one, I got a lot of
I'm so happy that I was like, do you have anything to say on this topic? And it was just like, yes, hello, perfect.
Hi, I'm Satine. I have everything to say on this topic. The other thing is be careful of crosstalk. You and I are going back and forth. We're kind of bouncing off of each other. And it's easy when you're friends and you're like, oh, this, and you're eating and blah. When people are in a scene together, watch the scene. Pay attention to what they're saying, what they're doing. If you're they're in a scene and you're talking to someone else, this is like in person. This can even happen like if you are chatting with another player through virtual gaming. You are not paying attention to what's happening. Even if you are not there, you should still be paying attention, because that's going to affect, like, that conversation or that encounter is going to affect how that player person is going to be playing the rest of the game. So there's a little bit of metagaming that is okay, and that is, you don't take that information and use it with your character, but
Right.
having that knowledge saves everybody from having to repeat themselves. It's the repetition that is often a slowdown of gameplay. So,
And there
pay
are ways.
attention.
Yeah, I feel like, sorry, I got very excited there, but I feel like there are
No, I
ways,
love it.
even when you're not actively metagaming and being like, and my character knows what you talked about, as a teammate to my companions, I have certainly in the past been like, I'm not going to act like I knew what you were saying in there, but if the conversation happens to lead in that direction, like, that's not cheating. It's not metagaming to be like, I will just mentally leave space for just in case they want to come out of that scene and tell me everything that just happened. I will be open to it, and I will know to be open to it because I was listening, if that makes sense. In my book, that's not
Exactly.
metagaming.
Perfect.
But
No, yeah,
maybe it is a
exactly.
tiny bit. I don't know.
There's a different hub. Now that's a whole different show called metagaming, how to and how not to.
Yeah. All right. So, anything different conventions, or sorry, for one shots at conventions or with strangers or digitally? I know those are like three different kinds of
Yes.
things, but
hmm So with your friends on one shots, you can go balls to the wall. Can I say balls? I don't know. You can go balls to the wall. At
all out.
conventions, all out. You in conventions, you're with people that you don't know often, or it's you and a friend and these people. Be very aware that what you might find funny or snarky or coy or something or edgy might actually be too much and too far for other players. So my suggestion would be asking, like, like the game master may or may not ask what people's boundaries are, and especially if they don't, you can ask, hey, I really like horror and dissecting things. Are you guys okay with that? Or I'm very, like, I like to hit on everything. Is that okay? Do you consent? The word is consent. And it's so funny. If you don't say, do you consent? People might go, yeah, it's fine. But if you ask, do you consent? It's so easy for people to say, yes, I consent. It's like psychology and it's a word thing. But if you say that, it does work. So try to keep it a little more PG when you're playing at conventions, because you have no idea where the person came from, what experiences they've had, good or bad, any triggers that might set them off. So imagine you were playing, I think it would be more akin to Adventurers League, where most of the games are PG, right? PG-13. I don't curse. I mean, even balls is hard for me to say. Like, I don't curse in public. I don't curse at conventions because it just doesn't seem right or appropriate. It doesn't serve the purpose of the game. So think of that. Does the thing that you want to do that's edgy, does that serve the purpose of the game? Does that move the story along? So just those are things to think about in convention games.
I
Also,
love that.
same as before, keep moving the story.
I think we have time for a couple of questions here. So we have some great ones in here. Let's see. First, as a DM, do you prefer longer or shorter descriptions of things from players? How do you figure out what the right amount of detail is for your DM? This is from Erin Lore. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Okay, so it depends. The game master's description of things, in my opinion, should be short. And I'm talking 20 to 45 seconds. If you're establishing something, 45 seconds. make that box text efficient, use your words like a screenwriter. For a player now, this is different. So I like to get my players to narrate how they take something down, right? If you kill it, tell everyone how you did it. If you roll a 1, I make them hit themselves and then tell everyone how they do it. This is like, 1 minute is a long time to talk. I don't know if you've ever timed yourself. It's a long time. So try to keep it around a minute. There's no reason to say anything for 2 minutes for a description. Now, if you're doing a character description, this is different than doing a how you killed something description, where you're like, I ripped its face open and blood squirted out, and I kind of grabbed the thing and I just shot it at all the other bad guys. Like that could kind of go on. That's really fun. But if it's like, hi, I'm Vlanya, and I've got long flowing red hair, a circlet, and the most fabulous gown you've ever seen. I've got this mysterious pendant and a cat that just keeps winding around my feet. I'm an elf. And so even that you're not going to say anything more than 1 minute. As a player, it is fun, in my opinion, to practice. You can practice this at home. Now, this is what I'm a story coach, a game master coach. And so often I will coach my dungeon masters to be efficient and practice. Look at a mirror, talk in a mirror, record yourself, time yourself. Write things down, time yourself while you're reading it. Understand what time looks like when you are doing something. And this is even different from when you were on a virtual camera, a virtual game to a real game. When you were talking to people in real time versus talking to people on a stream or, over a camera. So time yourself. Things are not what you seem. They're never what you think they are. So get used to understanding time. Practicing is okay.
I love this. I have occasionally done I should have prepped my couple of sentences of what I look like, but it has never occurred to me to actually time out how long that takes, and I'm very excited to put it to the test. Let's see. BG Baron asks, how do you handle a player that wants to kill all the NPCs? As a DM, I have a player that is hell-bent on it, and I'm not sure how to approach it.
Ooh, well, I mean, does it serve the story? How does it change the story, right? So what are the consequences? If this player has tried to kill all the NPCs and you haven't given him any consequences, yeah, I could see why they would want to kill all the NPCs. Now, to teach the player what consequences are in world, you can do a couple things. You could show them. So somebody's getting dragged across the square in handcuffs and people are whispering, they just killed so-and-so and they're going to be hanged, or you just have somebody notice and then you role play that. I've seen it go both ways. Getting punished for murdering, having another adventuring group find out who murdered this person. That's a side quest that is you escaping, and having to come clean about how you murdered this NPC and the world around you either forgiving you for it or chasing you out. Now, I've also seen it get pushed the entire way, where they are now taken out of the city and have to go find a whole new quest because this village has now basically kicked everybody out. So that's a thing too. And you're trying to not punish them. You're not punishing them. You're showing them consequences.
I love that. And the idea of demonstrating it with NPCs is a great one to sort of be like, are you sure you want to go on this path? The Great Jedi 70 says, what's the best way to have your players that are playing virtually stay more engaged when it's not their turn?
Oh, yeah, this is a hard one. I see this so much. Take notes. Have them, there's two things. They can take notes on what is happening when it's not their turn. And that means they're paying so much attention, they're writing it down. It might look like they're not, and this is something you can be like, okay, what notes did you guys get from that conversation afterwards? That one's hard. Okay, so this one's really complicated for a couple of reasons. everything I've learned was from being on stream. So the moment your players look down, what's down is my phone. They look down, they are not engaged with what's happening here. And it's as easy as I've got you and the camera here. And if I just look to the left, look, there's my mail. There's another, there's another thing. And nobody sees that I just clicked on something else and I'm reading something, you know. But when I come back, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. So every information that the game master and other players have is important to everybody. So if you miss something as a game master, and I got to be honest with you, I, Satine, am at a certain point where I'm like, you missed it. You don't get that. That was the place that you got that information. If you weren't paying attention, I will not repeat it. This happens too much, you know? Yeah, so players, just pay attention. If it's not your turn, the story should be so interesting, and your friends, it should be so interesting to you. You should care about what is happening to the people that you're adventuring with. And if you don't, ask yourself why. Why don't you care about them and what they're going through? You know, and maybe they're having an emotional scene and you've checked out, they come back out of that scene. Maybe they need a hug. Maybe their character needs a hug or a beer or something. And if you're not paying attention, you don't know that. And now they're floating around feeling alone. I would never do that to my friend.
Would you say, and this, because it's tough to say, like, a lot of this advice is sort of like, you really have to take an interest in what's happening at the table and the people around you, but there are also, we're all humans, sometimes you just missed something, and I feel like, let me know if I'm on the right track here, but what you're saying is, like, at a certain point, you, Satine, arrive at here, but that generally takes time, and especially if you're just starting out or getting to know people, don't be afraid to ask, I'm so sorry, I missed that name, can you repeat it? That, like, especially early on, unless it gets to be like you do this every single time, like that's
Yes,
probably a,
yes.
like, definitely don't be afraid, but do feel a responsibility to care, right? That's the balance.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. If you write your notes down and you hear a name, and this I hear, this, my players do this. I'm sorry, what was that name again? And they'll say it right there. And that's how I know they're writing it down. They help me, and I trust, and that helps me trust them as well. And so when they're like, okay, how do you spell that? You know, quadropolis, obviously it's spelled like this, you know? So when those moments happen, the faster they happen, the better. And I'll see if they're like, oh, there's a guy, and I remember that, and they'll be flipping through their notebook, and I'm like, okay, now I know that they're paying so much attention. They know they've written this name down. I will give them that time, and I'll give them the moment to look away from the screen. And this doesn't mean you just have to be there and have eyeballs on the screen the whole time. But it does mean, like, just care about what is happening.
I love that. So all that jazz 22 says, what is an appropriate amount of backstory that a PC should prepare? Is there a sweet spot?
Ooh, so you can prepare a million pages of backstory, but your game master isn't, it's not their job to fulfill your backstories. Being able to express a moment of backstory that relates to the moment, that is cool. So if a monster comes out of the forest and that monster was the same monster that took out your favorite horse, you might bring that up to your friends and like, that was a really hard battle because that owl bear actually ate my horse when I was a kid. Like, whoa, that's appropriate. You know, now stopping everybody and giving them metagame information out, that's like, you're not in character and you're not in a scene, but you just want everyone to know, that is not as good, unless that is something that everyone does in your group and it is something that your game master has said this is okay to do. Yeah,
I love
keep it
that.
short. Yeah.
If they're going to give you something, is there sort of like a keep it under a page, or like, do you have a guidance there?
Yeah. You can make me cliff notes. Yeah, Cliff
that.
Notes is cool. Yeah, and so sometimes my players will do a TLDR and then they will write novels, which I love because I want them to know their character, but also like if nothing, I look at backstories as this is what you went through, and then you meet everybody. And so you actually have the power to change. You like this is who you are. Satine Phoenix has a 41 years of backstory. And every once in a while, I'll drop a thing here, I'll drop a thing there. But that's it. I don't need to give everyone I don't even have an autobiography to give you, right? In order to hang
Although
out with me.
consider
That's
it
not a
because we
thing.
would all check it out. Yeah.
Aw, thanks. But it's like,
uh,
you do it for you.
okay. Last question. I'm sorry, there are too many good questions today, guys. Thank you so much.
You guys
A
are
rogue,
wonderful.
yeah. A rogue singer says, "How can a player help the DM not feel flustered when there's a party split or multiple location scene?"
Okay. It helps the game master a lot when when you do the party split, everyone understands, and this is how I am. I don't know how other game masters are. Imagine your whatever you do is going to take 5 minutes, and then you're going to toss the ball to the other group, and they're going to do something for 5 minutes, and then you toss the ball to the other group, and really like those scenes that you're in are small so that you keep it fresh. And the other thing is you're going to go back and forth with the game master in that scene, and by giving it back to the other scene, you have time to think about things and not be pressured to make a decision on the fly. So keep communication and keep track of time. Time is so important to the game master, so help them out a little bit.
This has been so incredible. Is there anything, Satine, that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure players know about how to help their DMs and make sure everyone has the best time they can?
Communicate, just express yourself. Maybe there are people who feel the same way you do, and maybe you don't have to kind of berate the issue, but you just need to be able to communicate and trust your game masters, trust the other players. Don't hold on to that spotlight. Hand it over to other people. Pay attention to the other people in your group and allow them to do things. It's so much more fun if you're not always like in the lead. If you can just be like, oh, here's this character, here's this character, we can do this together. And and please don't talk over your game master. Let them talk. They have information for you.
That's perfect. We are all here in those games to have a good time, and it works best when we're all working together. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you, Satine Phoenix?
Everyone can find me at Satine Phoenix on literally everything. I'm all over the place if it has anything to do with D&D. And also at Satine's Quest, I run luxury events. We've got one coming up in January 10th to 14th in Charleston, South Carolina at a mansion. That's D&D in a mansion. We have D&D on a cruise. That is May 29th to June 5th. It's 7 nights, all inclusive, super luxury, and more intense than anything I've ever done. That's satinesquest.com. So that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for your wonderful questions. And we will see you next time on D&D Beyond.